So 10.3 is going to be the area of a regular polygon. So when I say regular, regular means all the sides, and all the angles are equal or congruent. That means they're all the same. So all these side lengths would be the same, and all the angles would be the same for each of these objects. Okay, so it's equilateral and equal angular. So the center is going to be the center of the polygon with the circumscribed circle. The radius is going to be all of the blue dashed lines, so going from the center all the way out to the outside of the circle. So center to the outside of the circle. The apothem, or said apothem, is going to be the perpendicular line. So the apothem or apothem, so I'm going to say apothem for a lot of these, is going to always be the perpendicular line. Okay, so to find the area of a regular polygon, you're going to take 1/2 times your apothem, so your perpendicular line here, the length of it, so your apothem, times your perimeter. So to find perimeter, normally you would add up all the sides. Okay, you could add up all the sides, or you can multiply by how many sides there are if you only have one length of one side. But this is the equation that we're going to be using for these. Okay, so the area of a regular decagon. So I know my equation is 1/2 times my apothem or apothem times my perimeter. So first off, my apothem is 12.3, so I'm going to replace that. And my perimeter, well, one side is 8, so to find out how much my perimeter is, I'm going to take 8 times 10, because there's 10 sides, to find the perimeter, which is 80. So we're going to fill in that, and then we're just going to multiply them. And we're going to get 492, and we're going to make sure we label it inches squared. Okay, find the area. So I know I have a decagon, my apothem is 3.8 inches, and one side is 2.5 inches. Okay, so to find my area, I need my apothem, and I have that, so 3.8, times my perimeter. Well, if one side is 2.5, I need to figure out what my perimeter is, but it's a decagon, so that means it's 10 sides. So all I have to do is multiply these to find the perimeter. So I'm going to take 10 times 2.5 to get my perimeter. That's going to be 25, so we're going to multiply all of that times 25 to find the area of this. And we're going to get 47.5 inches squared. So my next one is an octagon, so that means it's 8 sides. So one side is 7.7, so we're going to multiply that times 8 to find the perimeter. So 7.7 times 8, 61.6. So that's my perimeter. I already have my apothem, so 9.3, and times 61.6 to find this area. So I'm going to get 286.44 centimeters squared. Okay, this one's going to be a little bit more difficult because we're going to have to work with the angles. Okay, so to find the measure of one of these big angles in this figure, we're going to go back to the last chapter. So we're going to take 360 divided by n, which is the number of sides. That will tell me the big angle in this, so angle 1. Okay, so we have to figure out how many sides there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to take 360 divided by 5 and get 72 degrees. So that means all of my big angles are 72 degrees. So the measure of angle 1 is 72. This one is 72, this one is 72, this one is 72, that big one is 72. So if all the big ones are 72, and the measure of angle 2, right here, this small one, is half of that big one. So all I have to do is take 72 and divide it by 2 to find the measure of angle 2. So 72 divided by 2 is going to get me 36 degrees. So I'm going to erase some of this so I can write in it. Okay, so the measure of angle 2 here is 36 degrees. Oops. Okay, now I need to find the measure of angle 3, so that angle right there. That one. But if you notice, we have a triangle in here. So I'm going to pull that triangle out so you can see it a little better. So we have a right angle. We have that top angle being 36. And we want to know this one. Well, all triangles should equal 180 degrees, so if I do 180 minus 36 minus 90, I should get that missing angle, which is 54 degrees. So the measure of angle 3 is 54 degrees. We're going to use this in the next couple of problems. We're going to build off of it. So we're always going to use that 360 divided by n in these next couple problems. Okay, now we're going to find the area of these regular polygons. So my area formula was 1/2 times my apothem times my perimeter. So if I'm looking at this triangle, I don't have an apothem, so I'm going to have to find it. But I can find my perimeter because I have one side. So if I take 16 times 3, I can get my perimeter, which is 48. Okay, now we need to find my apothem. So first off, I'm going to draw a center, and I'm going to draw all of my big triangles. So to draw the big triangles here, you're just going to go from each of the corners to the center. So to find the measurement of one of those big ones, I do that 360 divided by n equation because I need to find the big angle first. So I'm going to do 360 divided by the number of sides, which is 3. And I'm going to get 120. So that big angle is 120. Well, now I need to insert my apothem in here. So here is my apothem with my right angle. Okay, so that means if that big angle is 120, and I'm looking at that one of the small angles right here. Hold on, I'm going to emphasize it with yellow. So I want to know what that small angle is because we cut that 120 in half. So that small angle, that yellow right there, is 60 degrees because 120 divided by 2 is going to be 60. So if I pull that triangle out now, I have that right angle, I have 60 degrees kind of in that corner and 30 here. Okay, so now we need to figure out, well, this isn't going to tell me anything. It tells me 2 sets of degrees but no sides. Okay, so if I look at my triangle, if that whole length here is 16, well then what's half of that? Because I only want that portion because that's the only portion of my triangle I'm looking at. Well, half of 16 is 8. Okay, so that means that length is 8. So when I reference it in my triangle, it sits across from my 60 degree angle, so I'm also going to put it across from my 60 degree angle. And now we can work with this, okay, because what I'm trying to find is my apothem, so the one that makes that perpendicular line. So this one right here, because that makes my perpendicular line. Okay, the type of triangle it is a 30, 60, 90. So let's go ahead and reference that. So if we make this a 60, 30, 90, okay, so the equation that always sits across from my 60 degree angle is x square root 3. The equation that sits across from my 90 degree angle is 2x, and the equation that sits across from my 30 degree angle is just x. So let's remark it on my yellow triangle here. So the equation that sits across from that 60 degrees is x square root 3. The equation that sits across from 30, the one I care about, is x. Well, we need to find x so that we can find that apothem. Okay, so right now x, or 8 represents this side, but x square root of 3 also represents that side. So if they represent the same thing, all we can do is set those equal to each other. So 8 equals x square root of 3. To get x by itself, I'm not going to square it. If I square both sides, that becomes an x squared, and we don't want that. So all I'm going to do, since I'm multiplying by the square root of 3, is divide by the square root of 3. So now x equals 8 divided by the square root of 3. Well, my apothem represents x, so that means my apothem here is 8 divided by the square root of 3. Okay, so now since I have my apothem, I can do my area equation. So 1/2 times my apothem, so 8 divided by the square root of 3, and then times the perimeter we found earlier, so 48. So plug that all in your calculator. I suggest converting this to a decimal and then multiplying them all together. It makes it a lot easier. Okay, but you should get, this is your answer. So you should get 110 point, we'll say 85, and then label it centimeters squared. Okay, so I'm going to erase all this so that we can go to the next one. So I have that outside piece. I don't have the apothem again, so that's something I'm going to have to find. So we're going to do something similar to the last one. But I do have that outside piece, so I can find my perimeter. So I'm going to take 16 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 16 times 6, we got 96. Okay, now we need to find all of our big triangles. So we're going to make our center, and we're going to connect all of our corner pieces here. So we need to find the big angle. So we're going to do 360 divided by the number of sides. So 6 to find the big ones. So that's going to get me 60 degrees. So a big one is 60. So if I make my apothem in here, that means I need to cut one of the 60 degrees in half. So if I cut that in half, that means this pink one right there is 30. So I'm going to pull out my reference triangle out here. I'm going to make this 30. I'm going to make this 60. Okay, if that whole bottom is 16, I only want half of that bottom for my reference triangle. So 16 divided by 2 is going to be 8. So we have 8 sitting across from that 30-degree angle. So now we're going to go back to our 30, 60, 90 again. So the equation that sits across from 30 is x. The equation that we want, because we always want that perpendicular line for the apothem, so that one. Okay, the one that sits across from my 60-degree angle is x square root 3. So what I can do with these is set them equal because they should represent the same thing. So right now x equals 8. So to find out my apothem, all I do is plop that 8 in for that x to get 8 square root 3. So now my apothem is 8 square root 3. So we can go ahead and do our problem. So we're going to do 1/2 times 8 square root 3 times the perimeter we found, so 96. So A is going to equal, so should be 665.11 centimeters squared. Okay, so my next one, it doesn't look like I have my apothem because remember your apothem has to be that right angle, that perpendicular line. I also don't have an outside piece for a perimeter, so this one's going to be a little bit more work. So if I'm looking at it, let's go ahead and connect all of our angles here to make our big one. So I'm going to take 360 divided by 4 to get 90. So my big one is 90, or you could see that it's a square. So that means all of my diagonals should be 90 degrees. So then if I make my apothem right here, remember this dashed line is the 12. Okay, so I have my apothem. So if I cut 90 in half to find this little one, we're going to get 45 right there. Okay, so it's a 45, 45, 90. So if I make my reference triangle out here, sorry, those are 45. Okay, so the equation that sits across from my 45-degree angles are always x, and the equation that sits across from my right angle is going to be that x square root of 2. Okay, so let's pull our triangle out. Right now this is 12, and these are both my 45, 45s right here, and this is my right angle. So I need to find both because I need that outside piece and the apothem. Okay, so right now if I relabel it, we're going to have these being x and this being x square root 2. So if these are should be the same, that means I can set them equal. So x square root of 2 equals 12. To get rid of it, we're going to divide by square root of 2. So x equals, I'm going to get the decimal for this. And I'm going to say it's 8.49. Okay, so that means both of these sides, because now x represents 8.49, are 8.49 and 8.49. Alright, so my apothem, because this is my perpendicular line, is 8.49. But now I need to find my perimeter. So if that bottom is 8.49, that means this is 8.49. If I want to do my perimeter, I need the length of one full side, so I can multiply it by how many sides. So I need, instead of just this little piece, I need the whole piece. So we need to multiply this by 2 to find out that entire length. So that's going to get me like 16.97, we'll say. So I'm going to erase that and put 16.97 there. 16.97. Okay, now I can take that 16.97 and find the perimeter by multiplying by 4. So that I can find this. So multiply that by 4, and we're going to get like 67.88. So let's go ahead and do our A equals 1/2 times 8.49, my apothem, times that 67.88. So A equals 288.16 inches squared. Okay, so for the next problem, what I'm going to do is suggest you pause the video. I'm going to just write it out and then you can check your answer. I'm not going to explain all of it, but you can see the work for it. So you can kind of check to see if you know how to do it and if you get the same answer as me. So go ahead and pause the video now so you can try it. Okay, so if you can kind of follow the work, I'm going to circle the sections that I start with. So I started with making my big triangles. To find the big angle measure, I did this. I cut it in half to find my little angle measure. I found my little triangle. I set it up like this, which then referenced to 30, 60, 90, which is there. I found this to be 6 square root of 3, which I then put down here. but I need to find that entire length, so I had to do 6 square root of 3 times 2 to get that entire length, so I can find my perimeter. To find my perimeter then, I needed to multiply that times 3. Once I found my perimeter, I made my answer by doing 1/2 times the perimeter I found times the apothem that's given, and you should get 187.05, around that, meters squared.